President Trump said and all of that brouhaha, leave it there and move on with the science. Okay?
안녕하세요. 오늘 약간 좀 업돼 보이죠? 맞습니다. 오늘 마지막 날이고요. 내일 드디어 쉽니다. 하루 쉬지만 너무 기쁩니다. 그래도 그리고 오늘 우리 왕초님께서 제 리니지 아이템을 좋은 거를 띄워주셔가지고 왕초님 감사합니다. 방어구 잘 쓸게요. 오늘은 치킨 먹는 날입니다. 오늘 운동 끝나고 치킨 먹을 거예요. 한 2일 동안 제가 다이어트를 했나요? 와 진짜 근데 이틀을 그 저녁을 조금만 먹으니까 뱃살이 그나마 좀 들어간 것 같은 느낌적인 아닌 느낌이 나긴 나는데 어쨌든 그리고 오늘은 또 미세먼지가 심하다 그래서 창문을 못 열어요. 그래서 운동을 할 때 좀 더울 것 같습니다. 일단은 오늘도 역시나 스트레칭을 하면서 팔굽혀펴기랑 윗몸 일으키기를 하도록 하겠습니다. 역시나 CNN을 보면서요. 지금 그 세계 곳곳에서 이제 다시 경제 활동을 이제 하려고 기지개를 펴고 있습니다. 근데 아직 우리나라도 10명 미만인 상황에서 되게 조심스러운데 다른 나라는 특히 유럽, 미국 이런 나라는 글쎄요. 중국도 우한도 그걸 풀었죠. 많은 우려에 섞인 말들이 많지만 어쨌든 빨리 끝나야지. 이 방콕도 끝날 텐데. 진짜 수영장 언제 오픈할지 진짜 상상도 안 돼요. 제 생각에는 7월달? 6월달에도 수영 못할 것 같아요. 7월달이나 돼야 오픈할 것 같습니다, 왠지.
As you said, Georgia hasn't even peaked yet. You can understand why people want to get on with it, start their lives, rekindle their businesses. But it just shows what can happen if you move too quickly.
That's right, and ultimately to beat this virus, it's very likely that we're going to need to try to hold firm and find a way to get through this until there's a vaccine ready, and we know that vaccine will not be ready anytime soon. So we've been hearing a lot that this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint, and I think that's right. We also need to understand that we're just in the first couple of miles of that marathon. There's a long way to go. Everyone, of course, is concerned about the financial crisis and the economic toll this is having on families, but the only way to end the economic crisis is going to be to get the virus under control.
Right, and one of those, one of the three key things is antibody testing. It's underway. However, some are shown to be flawed. That can mean people thinking they are immune when they are not. How challenging is antibody testing? What do we know?
It's going to be an important tool for us as it is rolled out further, but we have seen a lot of challenges with quality and accuracy, particularly with the so-called point-of-care antibody test. These are the ones that somebody could do in their home for kind of a rapid result. Most of those we've seen really significant problems with accuracy. Then you run the risk of someone having a positive test when in fact it's negative. They're told they're immune, or they may be immune when they're not, and that's going to be a real issue. It's been less of an issue with laboratory tests. And so we've
백신
seen some
개발에
early results
박차를
from
가했다고
serial
하네요.
surveys. This is the kind of survey that we saw in New York, for example, where you do a random
이거
sample of the
엄청 먹고 있죠,
population and test for
WHO.
antibodies to give us a picture of what percentage of the population may have some immunity. That's going to be important, but the widespread rollout of point-of-care testing looks like it's still a ways off.
Well, we appreciate your expertise as always. Thanks so much for giving us your time. Peter Drubeck for us in Oxford.
Thank you.
Well, as the UK's coronavirus death count reaches a grim number, the government gets creative on ways to outfit doctors and fight back. We'll go to London live again here in a moment with the latest on that angle. Plus, around the world, many schools have been closed for weeks. We talk about the effects COVID-19 has had on students.
Africa in association with Zenith Bank.
The Kuno Hofmeister Memorial Observatory is one of the oldest privately owned observatories in Namibia.
Tonight we are going to observe two objects, 47 TAC and the Orion Nebula. So as usual, the first rule is first to remove the caps.
The University of Namibia uses the observatory to train their student astrophysicists.
I would love to be an astronomer, so I also contribute to the problems that are unsolved.
So I want to be at the front of all science and technology.
My dream would be discovering a star that I can name after me.
This observatory gives us a chance to teach our students hands-on skills. If you follow the laser pointer, it's that region right there. That's what we're looking at. Can you all see that?
The group has found the Orion Nebula, one of the star-forming regions closest to Earth.
You can't imagine what it feels like looking at objects millions of miles away. It feels like you can touch it.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly, whenever, wherever, or however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch for easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Vin Group, Vietnam's leading conglomerate, enters a new age. Vin Pearl, where endless joy awaits at holiday wonderlands. Vin Fast, where a state-of-the-art factory will provide mobility for a nation. Vin Smart, where innovations for daily living are smart and connected. Where the aspirations of Vietnam are realized for a better life for all. Vin Group, open to the world.
Unprecedented times call for unprecedented actions from the business world as companies rally to the battle against coronavirus. British carmaker Jaguar Land Rover sent over 300 vehicles to organizations on the front line and has designed 3D printed risers. They aim to produce around 5,000 per week. Elsewhere in the UK, online nutrition and wellness giant The Hut Group is donating funds and manufacturing essential products for key workers and vulnerable groups. Half will go to its base city, Manchester. The travel industry may have ground to a halt, but Trip.com, the travel service provider also behind Skyscanner, are refocusing their energies. They have donated 3 million surgical masks globally. For more stories of the people making a difference and to find out how you can impact your world, go to cnn.com/impact.
Prince Charles and wife Camilla right there, joining countless others in the UK in applauding healthcare workers. This was the heir to the throne's first public appearance since he recovered from coronavirus. Well, the United Kingdom is approaching a grim number of coronavirus deaths, close to 20,000 now. Officials there are pushing to get medical supplies to hospitals and health workers. And starting next week, Britain will begin using drones to make those deliveries. Meantime, the British government is assuring citizens its new website for essential workers to book coronavirus tests will be available again today. The site went live early Friday, but it shut down just hours later when appointments got fully booked. CNN's Nina Dos Santos joins me now live from London with more on this situation in the UK. Good morning to you, Nina.
Good morning, Natalie. Well, the UK again facing similar questions that it's faced over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks, really, without more substantial answers. One time after another, there appears to have been an embarrassment on the testing front here. You were pointing out this latest test, a website that went live yesterday, but to the embarrassment of the government, it had to shut down after it became completely overwhelmed with people, key workers trying to get
원래 20개 해야 되는데
their slots. 16,000 slots got booked
5개
in
나가겠습니다.
the first few hours, and then the site had to close because it couldn't cope. Now, why is all this embarrassing? Well, it's largely because despite the fact that the UK has remained steady at only being able to test around about 20,000 people at the moment, all of those largely key workers, police officers, people who work for the national health system, teachers, and so on and so forth, people on the front line here, and are more likely to be exposed to the virus, and people who could be concerned about passing it on to vulnerable members of the community. There are about 10 million people who would qualify for these types of tests, but it has been difficult rolling them out, getting them tested, getting them to drive through centres to be tested. Now, at the moment, the government, despite the fact that, as I was saying, they have been doing 20,000 tests consistently every day, they promised that they would manage to ramp this up to 100,000 tests by the end of the month. That still hasn't happened, as of course we're only days away from that big target, and the government hasn't backed down from that target. So we'll have to see how this website.
영국은 2만 명이 죽었다고 하네요.
Because there appears to be many disparities between the availability of some of these tests, whether they're home tests that you were discussing with the guest before the break,
일시백천만 10만.
they're more significant laboratory
매일
tests where people have
10만
to go
건의
through
테스트가 있고요.
sites to try and have a nasal or throat
4월 말까지.
Natalie?
All right, Nina Dos Santos for us in London. Thank you for that update, Nina. The pandemic has had a unique effect on students, particularly kids. Around the world, 9 in 10 students are stuck at home because of school closures, something CNN's Isa Suarez is trying to get a handle on with her own sons.
Count how many cans there are and circle the number. Parenting in a whole new light. The coronavirus pandemic has transformed our lives more quickly than anyone thought possible. And that includes me, as I, like so many others, balance the demands of doing my job as a journalist and schooling my 4- and 2-year-old sons. A shocking 91% of the students around the world are out of the classroom because of school closures, according to UNESCO. So when will it end? And how will schools reopen?
Here in the UK, we're still not sure when schools will reopen, when our children will eventually go back to schools and nursery. But it's a very different story in other parts of Europe.
When they come home from school, that's why they all they're hungry. And
Maiken and Soren live in Denmark. So as of this week, their daughters Kirsten, 3, and Edith, 7, are now back in school. Across Europe, some schools are open, some opening soon, some closed indefinitely.
they've divided the playground into 5 areas, and then they've divided the kids into groups. While they're sitting in the classroom, they're sitting somewhere apart. Yeah. They don't have as many desks and chairs as they usually have. So they're sitting like...
They're spaced 2 meters apart each.
2 meters apart.
There's a lot of focus on hygiene and hand sanitizing or washing their hands. That's what they do a lot.
The young parents say they were surprised that primary schools reopened so quickly, but they know children are less vulnerable to severe cases of the virus and are just happy that they can be with playmates their own age.
I think they can definitely feel that there's something different, but not necessarily that they can't really reflect so much about what and why.
Maiken and Soren, of course, have good jobs in a rich country, and the pandemic is exposing our societal fault lines. In New York last month, students formed long lines to pick up laptops for remote learning. A 2018 Pew survey found that 17% of teenagers in the US couldn't finish homework because of a lack of reliable internet connection. And that number was even higher for students of colour and low-income families. The virus clearly bringing to the surface all the inequalities that already plagued our societies.
This COVID-19 crisis is going to have a very detrimental effect. It is clear that there are families that don't have the devices, don't have the bandwidth access. It is clear that there are districts
세 번째
because of the pace at which they have to
시작하겠습니다.
distance learning couldn't provide the
똑같이
professional
탈북 표기
development
20개, 윗몸 일으키기는
When and how to
20개인데
get students back into school will be about
레그레이즈,
weighing
다리
risks. Here in the
들어올리기는
UK, authorities have made clear they're not
그
reopening
할
until
때
it's clear
허리가
that
많이
the crisis
아파요.
has eased.
유튜브나 다른 데서
Jeff
찾아봐도
Barton, whose union represents school
레그레이즈는
principals and
정확한
administrators,
자세로 하지 않으면
believes
허리에
this
무리가
is
간다고
something
하더라고요.
you can rush into.
윗몸 일으키기도 몸을 전체를 다 들어올리는 거는 허리에 부담이 가는데 누워서 다리를 기역자로 만들고 몸만 조금씩 움직이는 거는 괜찮다고 하더라고요. 실제로 허리가 많이 안 허리가 아프지도 않고요.
In Denmark, parents drop their kids off outside. Inside, the masks come off. In the Netherlands, they split the week, so only half the students are in on any given day. So how do we open schools? Well, it's a learning process. Isa Suarez, CNN, London.
All right, so parents of young kids at home, listen up here because we've got something for you. CNN and Sesame Street are teaming up to host a special coronavirus town hall for kids and parents. Big Bird will join Dr. Sanjay Gupta and Erica Hill to talk about how this is all affecting our kids. The ABCs of COVID-19, the CNN Sesame Street Town Hall will air Saturday morning at 9 in the morning in New York, 2 p.m. in London, and that's 9 in the evening in Hong Kong. We'll hope you watch with your kids. Several U.S. states are now trying to get back to business. Can it be done safely, though? We look at how it's being done here in Georgia. Coming up, also, the World Health Organization launches an effort to coordinate vaccine development, but not every country is signing on to their plan. We'll get to that.
뭔가 자세가 안 좋은가 봐요. 여기가 아파요.
Focused on issues of health and nutrition, education, and
3일
economic
연속
empowerment.
그런가?
The Aliko Dangote Foundation is the largest
오늘 내일
private foundation
쉬어야겠는데.
in sub-Saharan Africa. Aliko Dangote Foundation, setting Africans up for
팔을
success.
한번 붙여서 한번 해볼게요. 10개만. 괜찮긴 합니다. 괜찮습니다. 어쨌든 3세트 했으니까 운동을 할게요.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
네. 더워.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
is CNN.
Welcome back to our viewers here in the U.S. and around the world. I'm Natalie Allen. This is CNN Newsroom. We want to bring you the latest developments in the world's coronavirus epicenter. The U.S. death toll has now soared above 51,000, according to Johns Hopkins University. The grim milestone comes as the White House tries to walk back President Donald Trump's suggestion that people could inject themselves with disinfectant to fight the virus. Mr. Trump now claims his remarks were sarcastic, but he walked out of Friday's daily coronavirus briefing without taking any questions. Meantime, several states have begun to reopen their economies despite warnings it might be too soon. Perhaps the most important thing desperately needed in a crisis: clear, concise, and accurate information coming from the top. But in this crisis, many state and local governments across the U.S. are finding that just doesn't exist. CNN's Jeff Zeleny reports.
As states across the country inch toward reopening their economies, there's one thing governors have learned they can count on: mixed messages from the White House.
We're starting to open our country again.
That much may be clear, but the question is how and when. In the absence of clear and consistent direction from President Trump, a messy patchwork of state-by-state rules are now emerging of what's open and what's closed in America. Case in point is Georgia, where Governor Brian Kemp led the way by allowing several businesses to reopen on Friday, from gyms and salons to tattoo parlors and bowling alleys. He thought he had the president's blessing until he didn't.
I wasn't at all happy because, and I could have done something about it if I wanted to, but I'm saying let the governors do it. But I wasn't happy with Brian Kemp. Spas, beauty parlors, tattoo parlors, no.
The contradictions from one state to the next. You can get a haircut in Georgia, for example, but not in South Carolina, are the culmination of weeks of confusion over just who's calling the shots. First, Trump said it was him.
Well, I have the ultimate authority.
Then it was not.
Governors will be empowered to tailor an approach that meets the diverse circumstances of their own states.
But the president's condemnation of Kemp could offer the clearest signal yet for what other governors should and shouldn't do in trying to bounce back from their coronavirus fight.
I told him very distinctly, I said, Mike was there, I said, you do what you think is best. But if you ask me, am I happy about it? I'm not happy about it.
But the presidential rebuke is reverberating in state capitals across the country, where governors are deciding just how far and
네 번째 세트 하겠습니다. 조금 간격을 넓혀서 할게요.
On all cylinders again, but again, we have to be careful and cautious in what we are doing.
We want to go as quickly as we can, as safely as we can, to restore our economic vigor, while also restoring our personal health.
It's a complicated balance of studying health models, the rate of new cases, and even anticipating the president's own reaction.
A lot of the governors have done a really terrific job. Some I don't think have, to be honest.
But he's far from consistent. In Oklahoma, Governor Kevin Stitt also allowed personal care businesses like barbershops to open Friday, a decision that did not draw the president's ire. One unquestionable dynamic at the center of navigating politics of the pandemic is pleasing the president. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has made clear from day one that he's eager to be in Trump's good graces.
Make America great again.
And that loyalty could now play a role in deciding how fast to start up the Florida economy. With some beaches already partially reopening in his state, the governor has made clear he's itching to move quickly in the face of some public criticism.
For those who try to say you're morons, I would take you over the folks who are criticizing you any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
What's less clear is what signals could be coming from the president. Now, aides to several governors say that they are watching and listening to the president's words very carefully, hoping to avoid a rebuke that Georgia Governor Brian Kemp received. But this is a challenge as well. The president, of course, has been all over the board. No question, the road to reopening is a bumpy one. It'll be playing out for weeks and perhaps months to come. Jeff Zeleny, CNN, Washington.
The World Health Organization is spearheading an effort to develop and distribute vaccines and treatments for the virus. It announced a global partnership on Friday.
24분.
The COVID-19 pandemic is an unprecedented global crisis
어지러워.
that has been met
좀만
with an
할게요.
unprecedented global response. We're facing a common threat, which we can only defeat with a common approach.
Some world leaders were there to pledge support, but the U.S. was noticeably absent. That may come as no surprise. A little more than 1 week ago, President Trump suspended U.S. funding for the organization. He blames the WHO for not doing enough.
Had the WHO done its job to get medical experts into China to objectively assess the situation on the ground and to call out China's lack of transparency, the outbreak could have been contained at its source with very little death, and certainly very little death by comparison. This would have saved thousands of lives and avoided worldwide economic damage.
Mr. Trump's moves have drawn widespread criticism, but others have also questioned the organization's response to the crisis. Let's talk about this now with Laura Spinney. She is in Paris for us. She's a science journalist and author of the book Pale Rider, The Spanish Flu of 1918 and How It Changed the World. One would imagine, Laura, your book is being sold quite a lot these days. We hope so. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, you write in your book about how the Spanish flu led to greater global cooperation in fighting epidemics and eventually the creation of the World Health Organization. Let's talk first about how the Spanish flu changed the world, as you write in your title. Put it in historical context for us.
So the Spanish flu was a pandemic that struck in 3 waves between 1918 and 1921. It had infected 1 in 3 people on Earth and killed at least 50 million of them. And I think the world emerged from it with a realization that the only way to fight a global health crisis like that was with a globally coordinated response. So you see the birth of international health agencies starting from the 1920s. The League of Nations had a health branch to start with, which was dedicated to fighting epidemics. And eventually that gave birth to the WHO, which came into being in 1947.
We're seeing pictures from way back when, and we see people, with their face covered in masks. We know social distancing was encouraged as well. When you look at the pictures, even though it was so long ago, it's very reminiscent of what everyone's doing right now. What was learned from that pandemic as far as encouraging people to do what they can
요거 10개 들고
to make sure they don't get this?
등 여기
I think
좀
you hit on something really important
좀
there, which is
하겠습니다.
that governments play their part, but people have to do their individual part as well. And there's to be a bottom-up response too, and that means everybody wearing their masks. Really, the response was not that much different then to now, before we have a vaccine. And so it means everybody obeying public health measures, staying at home when they're told to stay at home, avoiding mass gatherings, wearing their masks. As if everybody does it, we can control or at least slow the spread of the disease. And if only some people do it, we do a less good job.
Right, because you say it's a biological issue and this certainly is a social issue as well. You also write, Laura, that there was a third wave to the Spanish flu. Talk about that, because right now you're seeing that states are itching to get on with it, to get people back out there, when really we're still at the beginning stages of this in some respects. Someone's seeing you on CNN. I want to say, hey, you're doing a good job.
Hang on.
It's all right. We can wait. These things happen. All right, so talk about the fact that there was a third wave way back in 1918, and here we are early on, and some economies, some leaders are itching to get on with it. We understand the desire for that, but what about it?
So actually the worst wave in 1918 was the second wave. But yes, it's really impossible to know what's going to come after the first wave, how the pandemic will evolve, and to know when you can lift the restrictions. Obviously we're seeing that now, but we've got the difference today is we've got mathematical models that tell us what will happen next.
오늘 진짜 운동 많이 했다.
It really depends on
훌륭해.
human behavior.